In 2002, a shocking case occurred in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where love, betrayal, and anger intersected, leading to a terrible tragedy. The case revolved around the death of Nadia Rahman, a young woman who discovered her husband, Zahid Ahmad, having an affair with Lena, a young student, at a wedding reception. The story quickly turned into a nightmare as the exposure of the relationship led to a heated argument that ended in violence. Nadia Rahman, 28 years old, was a beautiful and independent woman who worked in the marketing field at a reputable company in Kuala Lumpur. With her career on the rise, she was always busy with projects and tasks at work. However, despite her busy schedule, Nadia was still famous for her gentle and friendly personality and always knew how to build good relationships with colleagues and partners. One day, after many stressful working hours, Nadia felt tired and needed some time to relax. She decided to visit a famous coffee shop in the city, where the gentle atmosphere and melodious music could help her relieve her stress. When she entered the shop, the aroma of coffee and pastry spread in the air, making her feel relaxed immediately. She chose a corner near the window where natural light shone and began to enjoy a cup of hot cappuccino. While sipping coffee, Nadia had no idea that her life was about to change. While she was reading a book, a man walked into the shop, catching her attention immediately. Zahid Ahmad, 32, was a successful businessman in the construction industry. With his elegant dress style and attractive appearance, he was a man that anyone would turn their heads to look at. His sharp facial features and the confidence that radiated from every gesture made Zahid an ideal model in the eyes of many women. As Zahid walked in, his eyes accidentally met Nadia's. The instant connection between them made them both smile. Zahid noticed Nadia's attraction and decided to approach her. They started chatting, and the chemistry in the conversation flowed naturally as if they had known each other for a long time. Zahid shared about his career in construction and the exciting projects he was working on, while Nadia talked about the challenges of her marketing job. The attraction between them grew quickly, and after their first meeting at the cafe, they began dating more frequently. Romantic candlelit evenings, delicious meals at fancy restaurants, and walks in the park became an indispensable part of their lives. Every moment together was filled with joy and understanding, making both of them feel like they were living in a fairy tale. After a short period of getting to know each other, Zahid decided that Nadia was the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. He planned a surprise proposal, and the arrangements were made perfectly. One fine evening, Zahid took Nadia to a romantic garden decorated with flickering candles and fresh flowers. The sweet and romantic atmosphere made Nadia feel excited. As they sat down, Zahid began to share his deep feelings about his love for Nadia. He talked about the wonderful things they had experienced together and their dreams of a future together. In that emotional moment, Zahid got down on one knee, took out a sparkling diamond ring, and proposed to Nadia. She couldn't stop smiling, and tears of joy welled up in her eyes. She immediately nodded in agreement, and joy spread through both of them. Their wedding took place in a romantic and cozy atmosphere at a luxurious restaurant with family and friends in attendance. The atmosphere was bustling, filled with laughter and joy. Nadia, in her pure white wedding dress, looked beautiful as an angel, while Zahid shone in his elegant tuxedo. They exchanged vows, and happy smiles never left their faces. Soon after their marriage, Nadia and Zahid's life gradually became stressful. Initially, the happy days passed with smiles and sweet memories. But when reality hit, the two had to face the challenges that family life brought. Zahid, with a thriving career in the construction industry, often had to travel for work and attend parties to expand his business relationships. This led to his frequent absences, leaving Nadia at home alone to take care of their baby. Although Nadia understood that Zahid's work was important and necessary for the stability of the family, his frequent absences left her feeling lonely and insecure. The long days of taking care of the child made her feel like she was living in a cage, and sadness suddenly came over her. The moments they used to share were now rare, and she began to miss the old days when they were together regularly, sharing the joys and sorrows of life. When Zahid attended parties, he not only socialized with friends but also frequently met young girls, which made Nadia feel even more uneasy. Although Zahid never openly showed his infidelity, a feeling of suspicion began to grow in her heart. The phone conversations, the mysterious messages he received in the middle of the night, were too much for Nadia to ignore. She tried not to pay attention, but the feeling of unease grew like a ghost haunting their married life. Unable to bear it any longer, Nadia began to pay attention to Zahid's actions. Every time he came home late, a wave of anxiety rose in her heart, and suspicion began to creep into her mind. She used to believe in their love, but now every mysterious text message and call Zahid received was like a knife stabbing her heart. The combination of love and jealousy left Nadia in a state of confusion between trust and suspicion. Nadia decided she could no longer keep quiet. She needed to find out the truth about Zahid and began investigating what he was doing when he was not at home. During the afternoons, when Zahid was at work or at parties, Nadia would secretly search his phone, hoping to find any sign of infidelity. However, everything seemed to be hidden. Finally, an opportunity came when Nadia was invited to a party hosted by Zahid. It was a chance for her to observe her husband's relationships directly. During the party, she noticed Zahid laughing and talking happily with a young girl named Lena, a student he had met at another event. Their relationship was not just limited to a social level but also had intimate gestures that made Nadia's heart ache, feeling like a pin was stabbing into her heart. Nadia could not contain her anger and pain. Although there was no concrete evidence of Zahid's infidelity, the clear signs from the way he and Lena interacted made her feel angry and betrayed. The image of Zahid happy with someone else made her feel like a ghost in her own life. Nadia decided that she would not speak of what she had discovered. Instead, she chose to remain silent, waiting until she had enough evidence to confront Zahid. This self-restraint made her feel worse, but she knew that without clear evidence, arguing between them would only lead to unnecessary conflict. She had to stay calm and find a way to learn more about Lena and their relationship. Every night when Zahid returned home, Nadia was faced with conflicting emotions. She wanted to ask him about Lena but was afraid that the truth would hurt even more. Her life became an internal battle between love and suspicion, between trust and betrayal. Little did she know that while she was trying to find out the truth, Zahid was also struggling with the pressures of work and their relationship. At the wedding party on a night in August 2002, the atmosphere was filled with joy and happiness. The sparkling lights and laughter echoed throughout the banquet hall, but for Nadia, everything was heavy and tense. She had decided to attend her friend's party, even though she was not in a good mood. The bright lights from the chandeliers made the atmosphere more romantic, but something was wrong in Nadia's heart. When she saw Zahid and Lena, the young girl he had met at previous parties, chatting too intimately at the banquet table, a fierce jealousy rose in her heart. Although Nadia tried to convince herself that she shouldn't let negative thoughts dominate her mind, the intimacy between them was like a slap in the face. Zahid's smile, the way he looked at Lena, made her unable to control her emotions. She started walking toward them, unable to stop what was going on in her mind. When they arrived, Nadia took a deep breath and confronted Zahid. "Are you getting too close to Lena?" Her words echoed over the loud music, causing both of them to stop and look at her. The eyes of the guests also turned to them, the sudden attention making Zahid feel embarrassed. "Don't do this here, Nadia," Zahid shouted, unable to contain his anger. He had lost face in front of his friends, and that made the anger inside him flare up. The heated argument between the two broke out in the middle of the party, with harsh words being thrown from both sides. "Why can't you trust me? You've turned everything into a nightmare," Zahid shouted, causing tension to rise in the crowd. Chaos quickly spread, with the guests chattering about what was happening. Little did they know that Zahid and Lena's relationship had crossed a line that Nadia could no longer accept. The shame, anger, and hurt that had been pent up inside Nadia exploded, and she couldn't take it anymore. Everything was crazy and blurry, with relationships and emotions in turmoil. When Zahid returned home after the party, his anger had not subsided. He was still upset about what had happened, and it made him even angrier to think about Nadia's words. In a moment of indiscretion, Zahid's loss of composure led him to act cruelly. When they got home, things began to spiral out of control. In a fit of rage, Zahid attacked Nadia. Although Nadia tried to dodge and protect herself, Zahid's strength and anger made her unable to withstand the punches, curses, and acts of violence that took place in their living room. A feeling of despair rose in Nadia's heart as she realized that the person she loved and trusted could be so cruel. The injuries Zahid had inflicted on her were severe, and in his madness, he had completely lost himself. After realizing his cruel actions, Zahid panicked and was afraid. He stood up and saw Nadia lying unconscious on the floor in a lifeless state. The guilt overwhelmed him, and he didn't know what to do. In a moment of inattention, Zahid had turned their lives into a nightmare from which he could not wake up. With panic in his heart, he ran away, leaving Nadia lying alone in the dark room. The next morning, The sounds around him gradually began to return. The neighbors heard cries for help from their house, and a feeling of anxiety rose in their hearts. They saw Nadia, a woman who was always smiling and gentle, now lying unconscious on the floor. The urgency made them unable to sit still, and they immediately called the police. After the police received an urgent call from the neighbors, they quickly opened an investigation into this serious case. As soon as they entered Nadia and Zahid's apartment, the atmosphere was heavy. The police felt a tragic silence and signs of a serious fight. They began their work by collecting evidence at the scene. Investigators worked with forensic experts to analyze every detail in the room. While forensic officers collected blood samples and looked for signs of violence, another team was tasked with reviewing video footage from security cameras in the area. They examined footage from cameras around the building, hoping to find images that could show Zahid's activities around the time of the incident. The camera evidence would be an important part of building an investigative case. The videos were analyzed carefully. Through them, the police discovered that Zahid had left the apartment on the night of the incident. His image was blurry, but his clear features led them to believe that the man in the video was Zahid. Investigators recorded the time he left along with details surrounding the car he was driving, which further cemented Zahid's involvement in the case. Meanwhile, officers continued to interview neighbors. They were asked to provide information about what they heard and saw on the night of the incident. Several neighbors reported hearing loud arguing coming from the apartment, and the sound seemed to last for some time. They also said they heard crying and strange noises from inside. But none of them dared to intervene. Investigators realized that information from neighbors could be invaluable in determining the time of the incident and the activities that preceded it. From the statements, they were able to estimate the time frame in which Zahid may have been attacking Nadia. All these details will be included in the investigation file to determine the truth of the case. Based on the evidence collected, the police have identified Zahid as the prime suspect in the case. Evidence from the scene, video footage, and statements from neighbors have created a clear picture of his involvement in Nadia's death. This has prompted investigators to act quickly to ensure that Zahid cannot escape. After identifying Zahid's hideout, the police planned the arrest. Through a reliable source, they were informed that Zahid had booked a room at a hotel in the area. They prepared carefully for the arrest, with a special task force dispatched to ensure the safety and success of the mission. The task force went to the hotel in full preparation. They located the room where Zahid was staying and conducted a security check. The officers split into two groups. One stood outside to block the exit while the other was tasked with approaching the room. They could not afford to give Zahid another chance to escape. As they approached the door, the task force paused to confirm information. They knew that if Zahid suspected something was wrong, he could find a way out. Tension was in the air as the officers prepared for the arrest. Finally, a decision was made. An officer knocked on the door and announced that they were police. They asked Zahid to open the door. There was a moment of silence before voices were heard from inside. Everyone outside could feel the tension. When the door opened, Zahid stood there looking surprised and panicked. The police immediately rushed in, restrained Zahid, and read him his rights while other officers searched the room for any evidence related to the case. Zahid was still confused. Everything was happening too fast and not the way he expected. Anxiety and guilt were swirling around him, but he tried to stay calm. While some officers kept Zahid there, others began investigating the room. They looked for any signs that Zahid had been there before. Objects in the room were carefully examined. Every detail could be important in determining what happened that fateful night. The officers discovered several suspicious items, including some papers with Nadia's name on them and receipts from parties Zahid had recently attended. These pieces of evidence further cemented suspicions of Zahid's involvement in the case. The pieces were slowly coming together, and the police were getting closer to the truth than ever. After gathering enough evidence, Zahid was escorted to the police car. His eyes were filled with confusion and guilt, but deep down, he still didn't want to admit what had happened. The police were preparing for an interrogation at the police station, where Zahid would face tough questions and be forced to explain his actions. At the police station, Zahid would be questioned by professional investigators. They were well prepared and knew the tactics to force him to tell the truth. Although Zahid may try to deny it, the overwhelming evidence the police have gathered will make it difficult for him to hide from the truth. Zahid was brought to trial in late 2002 in a tense and highly publicized trial, where the case against him was presented in a clear and coherent manner. Investigators collected a wealth of evidence from the crime scene, including blood samples, wounds, and signs of violence, all of which pointed to Zahid as the perpetrator of Nadia's tragic death. Witness testimony, including from neighbors and friends, supported the allegations. They heard arguments coming from the couple's apartment and were present at the party where Zahid and Lena met, painting a clear picture of the troubled relationship between Zahid and Nadia. Although Zahid expressed remorse and insisted that he did not mean to cause his wife's death, the circumstances of the case could not overshadow the fact that he let his anger get the best of him and that it led to serious consequences. Finally, after considering all the evidence and testimony, the jury sentenced Zahid to life in prison for murder. The words "justice has been served" rang out in the tense atmosphere of the courtroom, bringing this heartbreaking case to a close. The end of the case is not only a sentence for Zahid, but also a reminder to society of the importance of combating domestic violence and protecting women's safety.